of the studies on needs assessment 2010 to 14, which provided many recommendations that you will then also recognize again in the terms of reference of the actual 2015 to 19 work. Very quickly, these first slides, I don't want to really spend a lot of time here. This Article 13, as you see it on the slide, sets out the background of the assessment work. It's particularly paragraph 6 and paragraph 7. I won't read it out here, but I invite you to look into this if you are interested. So we have Article 6 and 7 providing the background of this current COP decision. And I think here is very interesting, just a general overview what the needs assessment is. It's on one side a periodical evaluation of financial resources required by developing country parties and parties with economies in transition to implement the convention on one side. For doing so, it includes the estimation of several cost factors for activities under the convention. First of all, direct obligations under the convention, then those activities that are necessary to implement this convention, and also indirect costs. The information is generally based in the national implementation plans and is also typically divided into specific funding needs. On one side, NIPs are mainly divided by specific action plans, or can be divided by articles and related obligations. Most importantly, this is also a decision taken at COP5. The needs assessment will be usually fed into the negotiations of the GEF replenishment. And this is a timely matter, as you are well aware that with the COP 6 next year finishing will be more or less the same time when the negotiations for the next GEF cycle will start. So very briefly here an overview on COP1 and COP2 decisions. I wouldn't read out these, so I will skip these slides. If you're interested and you have more questions on the background, please get in touch with either me or Hamoudi directly, and we will be happy to respond to any questions. The GEF for replenishment, in fact, just to note here, was based on a preliminary assessment, among other things, allocated 300 million. I would like you to just recall and remember this figure. The preliminary report here, just as it was the first of its kind, draw information from NIPs of 30 parties, a very limited amount of information available here. The total estimated cost varied here from 125 to 277 million US, averaging above around 25 million. And this preliminary report led to a decision at COP3, which welcomed the report and also adopted revised terms of reference. Then on this slide, we talk about the terms of reference quickly, not going into detail, but it sets out basically the rough principles of the terms how to undertake the needs assessment. First bullet point, it should be facilitated by the Secretariat, but completed by a team of 3 independent experts, or up to 3 independent experts, as the actual tour is now setting out. It should build always on the previous needs assessment reports. I will come to that later on. And should include, on one side, costs identified in NIPs, direct obligations, as mentioned before, that are necessary to implement the convention, and also indirect costs. Then also another source of information that can be drawn upon is Article 15 reporting. Every party to the convention is undertaking and submitting on a frequent basis Article 15 reports. So the final report of the last needs assessment, it's important just to note the outcomes of that. It was presented at COP4. It analyzed data of roughly half of the parties eligible for that. It was 67 parties have been included, and it was covering 4 regions. The total estimate for these 67 parties were roughly $10 million US dollars, 10 billion, excuse me. And here also the figures for the specific regions. The estimated costs are likely to be less than the actual cost. It was one of the findings of the report due to a lack of resources between the 2006 and 9. Also a lack of data. You see, we haven't really gotten a chance, or respectively the experts, to have data from all the NIPs. Then we have an increase in number of developing country parties that were part of the convention, and also there were a lack of provisions for future amendments of the convention. Then some recommendations that came directly out of the report of the consultant. One of the most important ones is most of the NIPs where the information were drawn did not include baseline or incremental costs. So here we weren't sure in the report what actually a cost figure would represent. And first, then the second bullet point, like the level and quality of data was high in general, but diverse in such that the NIPs didn't follow a specific format. The report was transmitted to the CHEF Council, and remember the last replenishment yielded in a rough allocation of 300 million for POPs. Here in CHEF 5 allocated roughly 380 million for POPs work, so a slight increase. But if you remember the figures that were presented were much higher for the implementation, and that is a certain discrepancy that the needs assessment results yielded, and at the end what the CHEF then provided for POPs. Decision for 24 is the preparation of what you will see as a party in the current needs assessment study. It requested the Secretariat, among others, as outlined here on the slide, to prepare a simple and consistent format that will facilitate the assessment of funding needs. And that simple and consistent format would, as so the COP, seek to provide more reliable data that is comparable across regions and across parties. In section 2, now I'm switching to the COP5 presentations. Here, first one, we had, of course, quite interesting and long discussions on the needs assessment. But basically, the outcome here is that needs assessment should be completed on a regular basis here every 4 years, also to coincide with the CHEF replenishment process. And some also links to the consultative process, but I will not go more in detail into this topic. Decision 522, it was a quite long decision, and as I said, first bullet point is on the funding needs, the undertaking of the needs assessment every 4 years. Moreover, as I said before, COP4 asked to prepare a simple and consistent format. COP5 approved this format, and also at the same time the terms of reference. And for the terms of reference, the COP was of the opinion that this should be a living document. So we will conduct in due course between now and COP6, well, advance of COP6, an evaluation. We will ask all stakeholders that are involved to provide their views. Moreover, apart from filling out this format, parties are requested to include in their submissions a summary of their NIPS. And moreover, that is a side part of this decision, as the Secretariat is doing this every COP, is to prepare a report on additional funding. But I need to outline here that this is apart from the needs assessment work. The Secretariat has informed and requested information from parties right after the COP, and has received input from 13 entities, including parties, NGOs, and industry. That will be part of the overall report back to COP. Here on that slide, and very quickly, the terms of references. It hasn't changed significantly to the terms of reference of the previous, except, as I mentioned before, that it will include more considered information on incremental and baseline costs, and also take into account not only the funding needs for 2015 to 19, but also look back in the period of funding used in the period of 2010 to 14. Then here, what are the goals of this year's study? Particularly the second bullet point here, of course, the main objective is to prepare a report that will be submitted to COP6 in 2013. For this, the Secretariat has already hired a team of experts that will undertake this report. We aim at, roughly in terms of deadlines, to receive input from parties by the end of September, and then finalize the report roughly November, December at the latest, to feed this into the document preparation process of COP6. As I mentioned, this will be fed into the CHEF negotiation and replenishment process. Here, the 42nd CHEF Council meeting would be a target date for this work. In terms of facilitating the collection of information, and my colleague Hamoudi will come to that now in a bit, the COP also asked the Secretariat to prepare sort of like a facilitation form and call it the information collection form. This is mainly to assist parties to fill in the format, and you will see later on in more detail how this format, including this information collection form, will look like. So I will not go into detail. But most of here, what it tries to achieve is to guide parties into distinguishing between so-called baseline and the incremental costs. Here, just a very quick overview on the format. This was adopted at the last COP, so you will see, and Hamoudi will introduce that later on, but just to give you a rough overview. And with this, I would like to pass the floor to my colleague, because I think it's more important now to see how this format can be applied. And from my side, thank you very much for your attention. I will be also available later on general questions if you have any. And with this, I pass on the floor to Hamoudi. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Hamoudi. I'm a program officer with the Secretariat, and I will introduce the second part of this training session, focusing on the form for the needs assessment reporting rather than the presentation. What I'm going to do is I'll actually show you where to find the form, and then show you how to open it, and then how to use it with a couple of examples. But we will provide you with, there is also a presentation that is sorry, I have to put it on the screen. Sorry, we're just for 1 second trying to look for the right icon there, so you can see actually that you are my desktop and see the form itself. Number of you may be aware that a letter was sent by the Secretariat in the past couple of weeks to invite you to fill in the reporting questionnaire, and it sent you to our website, pops.int, where under implementation and under the financial mechanism, you will find additional information for this exercise. So on this page, you will find, well, the decision, but you will also find the reporting electronic format that we're using, as well as the format is here, as well as related guidance to help you fill in the form, and a template for the submission of NIPS summaries. So if this is your starting point, we would invite you here to save the Excel spreadsheet and then open it. And you will see here, one of the important things is to enable the interactive forms to be used, you will have to enable macros. So you will have to go into your security options and here enable the content and here press OK. This is also explained in the guidance form and hopefully should help you getting started. The form in itself provides some summary information on each submitting country. We invite submissions to be coordinated through official contact points and provide the information here on the country, details on the submitters, whether you're the contact point, etc. The form in itself is really based on the one that was adopted by the COP at its 5th meeting last year. So it separates entries into different articles, Article 3 and 4, 5, 6, etc. The most important one, and these are the ones under which we guess entries have been made, are the 3 and 4 on intentionally produced POPs, 5 on unintentional POPs, and we assume 6 on stockpiles, waste, and contaminated sites. We would guess that the other articles or other provisions would still be relevant, but there would be maybe less information. You will also see the distinction made here between the resources in 2010-14 and the ones in the future. Also to highlight again what Frank mentioned is that the COP will be looking at the resources and the needs for the period 2015-19. Before filling the form, what we suggest is that countries develop a list of activities for each period, highlighting the priority activities under which reporting period they would go, and possibly making a distinction among them between national and external costs. This will help you because when you will fill in the form, let's say you have, for example, a project on PCB. So PCB are covered under intentionally produced POPs. They're an industrial chemical following Annex A. So if you had an ongoing project, for example, due to be completed next year, you would click here and have the first form open. The form allows you to distinguish between the different chemicals you're looking at on the left side. On the right side, obligations directly taken from the convention. You can scroll down and there are more of them. And on the right bottom, the type of project, activities, program you're actually undertaking. So if we had a PCB project, we would go and here click on the PCB. And if that project was to address electrical equipment replacement or disposal, we would select this section. You have to select also the relevant obligations. So here we're looking at measures to reduce risks from PCBs, elimination of use in PCBs, sound management of PCBs, but maybe not the report. That would come as another activity. Then you would provide information on the relevant field, whether it's addressing policies, legislation, sound management, sound disposal, and then you can highlight the fact that it's a PCB project. And once you have this general information on that project, you would click Continue. Sorry, there's just there you click Continue. And here you have the financial information. This allows you to provide diverse type of information. For example, if for your GEF project on PCBs, your national government is contributing $500,000, you would add it here. You can also add an industry, national industry contribution for $300,000 and highlight it there. The external funding, for example, if you're looking at the GEF providing you $1 million, would be added here. And let's imagine that you also have a grant of $500,000 from the World Bank. You can highlight it here. Our aim with this form, and here, for example, I have done a mistake. It was not 5 million, but 500. So you can directly edit here your entry and save changes. This allows you to have really detailed information if you have that information available for that specific project. We've also thought of distinguishing national resources and external resources to help parties make the distinction between baseline and incremental cost. And although the definition of baseline is not always the one of a national or an incremental of an external, we thought it was an easier way for parties to be able to make the distinction between both costs. The form also allows you to highlight whether this is part of the NIP or not, and you could say, for example, here that it is there, that the activity is ongoing, and then you can add links. And if you save, you can also continue under the same article and add another project. And you will see that your project on PCB is now listed here. But you can add another more general project that you have on other industrial chemicals. For example, on BDEs, you have a new project working on alternatives and substitutes. So you can here again select the related type of program, sound management, national policies and strategies. You're looking at eliminating use and production, and then you're actually also working on recycling. And here you can put another type of project funded by the government for $100,000. And this, you could say, maybe is not part of the NIP. This, you could say, is a new project. And this is an activity that is ongoing, and it has links to the Basel Convention. And here, you will see both projects and activities listed. You could, at any time, modify one of them by clicking on it and selecting yes, and then select the changes. If you click on the change article, this will close the form, and you will see that here the section that we've now filled in has become black. And the idea is that you would go through your list of activities and then see for each article which one can be updated. So that's the general approach. If you want, I'll give you another type of project that you can be doing. Let's say you're doing an awareness raising campaign for farmers on pesticides. So you would click on Article 10, and you will see here the form is slightly different. And then you will say, well, we have been using money in 2010-14 to promote awareness, to facilitate access to information, awareness raising programs, training of workers, and here the related field would be national policies and strategies, training, awareness raising. You have worked with local communities. And here you have, again, the similar form with a project, and you can add a project that was for $20,000 done by an NGO. And you'll see here this appears. There is the reporting for the next period is nearly identical. So for example, if you had a pesticide project that you're looking at undertaking in the next period, you would click here under Annex A under pesticides. And here, let's say you have a very specific project on endosulfan and lindane. You can identify the areas you're working on, as if it's an agricultural pesticide, if you're working on exemptions, etc. Here, maybe you're looking at agricultural pesticides, and you have a project on lindane, let's say for human health. And here, again, exactly the same type of entries. Note that the obligations change for each article. The type of activities also change. So you're looking at changing some of these, working on alternatives and substitutes. And the form here is nearly identical. Here you can state that you have funding, let's say, from an IGO, you have a UNDP project. Let's say now you have an FAO project for $400,000, and you can add it. And here you can identify that this is, again, activities that is not in the NIP, as it is being updated. And you can also say that this was an activity that you had planned before, but you didn't have you hadn't received any funding. So this is what we call a carryover activity from the 2010 and 14 period, but for which you hadn't received any funding. You can link it to the Rotterdam Convention, for example, and save. So here I can go back and add additional pesticides, or I can go back to the main form. This is, and then maybe I will stop here the general presentation on the form. This is simply to show you how to use it. Again, you have on the website available to assist you guidance that we have developed that gives you examples on how to simply use the form just the way I've shown you. More text on, again, for example, PCB project, how to fill in the form. There is also a glossary of terms, more information on incremental and baseline costs, on what national resources are, etc. So we invite you to really consult this guidance in addition to the form, just to let you know that we're still testing it, and hopefully we'll have it shortly available in French and Spanish to help you in filling in the form. So again, I will maybe stop here this training session and hand the floor to you if you have any question. If you have questions, please raise your hand. So using the hand sign that is on the bottom left of the webinar page. So I'll give you, maybe I'll mute my microphone now and give you the opportunity to think of questions, and whether on the first part of the webinar or on the second part. Thank you again for your attention.